I think I will start introducing today's last plenary. You've had 2 rounds in your discussion groups by now, and there will be a 3rd round tomorrow morning. And what we're going to do now is a kind of interim state of work report. And I'm very glad that I could get chairs and or rapporteurs of the various groups. And they will now, they've been given a template, a set of questions they might want to stick to when they tell you what the group has been working on and which conclusions the group has reached so far. Here is Maria. Will you just join us here? Okay, wonderful. So the first working group on qualification frameworks, quality assurance, recognition and transparency tools was chaired by Anna Muravyova. And Anna, will you be so kind as to present us your preliminary conclusions? There will be another round tomorrow, but the idea was that if you go to the group tomorrow, you can already work on the conclusions that have been reached today, okay?
Yeah, you can jot them down now. Okay, thank you. So the first question that the groups, so actually we worked in small groups and each small group produced a set of conclusions in answer to the 5 questions that we were asked to address. And so the first was having a closer look at the Bucharest Communique and having listened to the introductory keynotes and to the presentation made in the group, what are the main novelties in the field of qualification frameworks, quality assurance, recognition and transparency tools? So just by way of enumeration, novelties: automatic recognition, stress on enhancing efforts to introduce and use national qualification systems, the European Academic Recognition Manual, focus on peer learning, the right to be given to agencies, qualification assurance agencies registered in the European Register to perform activities across borders, that is to accredit programs in other countries. Strong emphasis, novelty, on learning outcomes as a foundation for qualification frameworks, ECTS, diploma supplement and recognition, and a stronger student profile compared to other documents. Now, what role can Bologna and Tempus higher education reform experts play when it comes to the implementation and interpretation of the communique in the above-mentioned fields? So, role. Dissemination, of course, of the ideas of the communique, feedback and some actions taken based on the feedback, monitoring of the developments in line with what the communique says, probably also training provided by the experts, assistance to governments to come to grips with the ideas of the communique, and there was also ideas about putting pressure on the ministries and governments to comply with what the communique is all about. Awareness building, assistance with the common and correct interpretation of the communique provisions, because interpretation is a very tricky issue. Closer cooperation between all Bologna promotion groups, follow-up groups, higher education expert groups, so building a community of these diverse groups. Then another thing the experts see their role in is promoting best practices, providing inputs to resolve problems with recognition of bachelor programs, for example, programs having different duration in different countries, and of course promotion of the learning outcomes and all related issues. As for the third issue was examples of good practices, There are very many examples, and so the groups just limited themselves to only a few. For example, one was mentioned as regional Bolognian higher education experts meetings. Then the Dutch-Flemish automatic recognition agreement, to which Denmark is also going to join. In Austria, another example comes from Austria, it's regulation and management of recognition practices. It's another example from Russia, it's the way double degree programs are recognized and kind of accepted by the ministry. An example from Scotland, where quality assurance, external quality assurance, is performed in the interest of enhancement, which I think means a lot to everybody. And another thing is, like the experts said, of good practices. Good practice is the application of Bologna principles by the experts in their own teaching practices and work practices. Now, to-do list. What do the experts consider as an absolute must? So it's strong pressure on the stakeholders, governments, etc., to have the NQFs in place and to have the NQFs used for all the relevant purposes. Then it's promotion of the Communique ideas in diverse formats. It may be workshops, conferences, articles, publications, whatever. Then another thing that they would see themselves instrumental in, that is linking learning outcomes to employability, ensuring internationally accepted accreditation for double degree programs. Another is compiling national database of good practices, promoting understanding of the learning outcomes, because it's not there in some countries. Then enhanced work on learning outcomes in disciplinary areas internationally. So creation of such disciplinary cross-border groups to identify learning outcomes. Then it's for the countries that don't have national qualifications systems yet, is to have them in place, linked with the EQF. And another thing is a promotion of the European Quality Assurance Register. Now, as for the feasible priorities before year 15, again, having the NQFs by year 15 in all countries, and not just on paper, but having them functional, making them functional, and ensuring that ECTS, diploma supplements, etc., be built on learning outcomes. Have the cross-border accreditation in place, updating national legislation to make implementation of the Lisbon Recognition Convention, and I formulate it in this way, to make it a legally binding reality in all countries, and enhanced involvement of higher education reform experts in the activities of ENIC-NARIC, and integration of the national qualifications frameworks in the recognition procedures. And of course, all national qualification frameworks should be linked with the EQFs. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Anna. You must really have had very fruitful discussions, given the list of tasks you have identified. Maybe tomorrow morning you might get back to our participants with this list and maybe try, if possible, to prioritize the one or the other. I mean, they're all very important, but maybe it might be interesting to check maybe what might go before what, if that is possible to say. Okay, thank you. Group number 2 was dealing with mobility, and it was chaired by Lerzan Oskale. And we'll hear what you found out about mobility.
Okay, so for mobility, with regard to the answer to the first question, which was what are the main novelties in the field of mobility coming out of the Bucharest Communique, both of the groups found out that there was not such a novelty in terms of mobility in the communique. Still, both of the groups attracted the attention to almost the same issues which should be tackled with, starting with the funding problem. Also looking at the data collection and the recognition problems. But one major element which came out of the second group with which we have worked was that is the mobility really a genuine priority at the national political level? So this was seen as a condition in order to move towards more mobility. And this was an important point. With regard to the second question, which was the role that us as experts can have in the implementation, we found out that we should be advocates for first changes which necessitate institutional or political power. So we cannot, of course, we cannot change regulations, legislations, or even at the institutional level, things very easily, but we can advocate for those changes. Again, at the same sense, we can also be advocates of internationalization strategy in the institutions where we are working. Asking for designing of the internationalization strategy at the institutional level. We can also invite employers, this was one of the specific proposals, inviting employers to contribute financially to the mobility of students. It will get rid of, it will make us get rid of one of the barriers to mobility. Another concrete example was of trying, as Bologna experts, to cooperate more with the existing networks, such as CEFI or other types of existing networks, which will help us increasing mobility in Europe or in higher education, European higher education area. With regard to the good practice, many regional, cross-border or transnational cooperation examples had been revealed, but the most striking good practice example was from Belgium, the action plan for mobility of the Flemish community, which is really interesting because it is an action plan which is based on credits, and the funding is provided to the institutions based on the credits, and the weight of the credits would be increased if the credits are for mobility purposes. The credits are realized in mobility periods. So if the universities wants more funding, they would be inclined to send their students for mobility in order to attract more funds. For to-do lists, this was not an easy task to define. One of the tasks that were defined was putting pressure on institutions and governments for changing regulations, laws, creating barriers to mobility. So we can only expect to put pressure, more pressure. The second one, to include the results of the communique in the Bologna promotion material that experts are using regularly when they are giving seminars, speeches at the national level, and it will help promote and expand the knowledge at the national level. And with regard to the fifth question, again, the second group was a little bit difficult. I wouldn't like to say lazy, but they did not find something concrete in to tell. Am I right? But what has been revealed is that internationalization strategies can be introduced at the condition that existing legislative barriers are removed by the national authorities. So, to sum up, I think for mobility purposes, experts participating to both of those groups seem to find that most of the work to be done necessitates political will at the national level. And we can only contribute to that by advocating benefits of mobility, but we cannot do the job ourselves. It's very difficult or impossible. Thank you.
Also, I think for the last point you mentioned, because to my knowledge, it's the first time that in the concomitant documents to the communique, nation states are also required to work on the national internationalization policy. So that should go hand in hand with institutional internationalization policies, and I would quite agree that it's our task then also to make sure that this happens, and also to influence that strongly in the way that the national internationalization policy should not contradict or should not go against the targets of the institutional internationalization policies, if possible. Topic number 3, another not quite so easy topic, the social dimension. Frank McMahon, you will try to deal with this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. As you say, not an easy topic, and one that we were conscious has been around for 10 years and hasn't made the kind of dramatic progress that's made in other areas where things like ECTS and quality assurance and national frameworks have largely been introduced. And of course, it became obvious, our presenter was Brian Power, who is the chair of the Bologna follow-up group on the social dimension. And you know, we got to learn a lot about the politics and about the different situations from in the 47 member countries. I'm happy to say in our group that every single person who was there in each of the first and second session did speak and did describe what was happening and came up with ideas for their own countries. In regard to the first question, what are the main novelties from the Bucharest communique? There were 4 that we identified, and the first was the introduction of peer learning initiative, and peer learning here used in the sense that countries and institutions could learn from each other, and that would be a way forward of trying to make some progress. Secondly, there was agreement by the ministers to adopt national measures, and I think that's an important step forward. There will be action plans from individual higher education institutions, and our hope coming out of this would be that as some countries move forward, that they will put peer pressure on other countries to make progress, but it's not one in which there is mandatory action. The second question was what role can the Bologna and the Tempest higher education reform experts play? And the first one that we agreed on is that we would believe in the social dimension. We would become advocates for it and ambassadors for it. More specifically, we felt that experts could get concrete data and international comparisons, because it's an area where that's lacking up to now, and we feel that we should go back and analyse what's happening in our own institutions and in our own countries. We have agreed that we should act as persuaders, putting some pressure on the government and parliament to take greater account of the social dimension. And we felt that this was an area in which we could very usefully work with student groups, and we could make common cause with the student unions and student groups. We were asked to find some best practice. I think there was a general envy among our groups of the happy situation in Denmark and Sweden, which seem to be particularly well off. And Ireland has done quite a lot, but when you heard, for instance, in Denmark, that every student gets €500 a month and says this is fine and gets free fees, this is something which other countries could only dream about. There was some imaginative use of open and distance learning to support students who otherwise would not be able to participate in higher education or need support while they are in higher education. And there was an interesting French example, which I think was new to most of us, where some of the major companies have come together. They have produced 700 mentors who will advise individual students and school groups and university groups about, to help them to make this transition into higher education and keep them there. The fourth question we were asked to look at was, what do we consider as an absolute must to take home for things to do? And the first was to believe in the social dimension, to become a supporters of it. The second was to gather data about our own institutions and make us better informed, make others better informed. And the third was to become ambassadors for the social dimension. And finally, we were asked, for instance, to look at what could be achieved between now and the Yerevan ministerial meeting in 2015. And we had 4 things which we felt could be done. The first was a statistical analysis, because up to now there's not been agreement, and the ministers have agreed, and they've charged the groups with producing this statistical analysis, and we expect that will be finished in time for the Yerevan ministerial meeting. The second thing that's agreed is, although it's not mandatory, that there will be expert reviews, and this is where countries will volunteer to have their system looked at to see how they are scoring on it. And we think that some of those will have taken place between now and 2015. We expect that national plans for the social dimension will be in place in many countries. Probably not all, but in many of them. And again, as we said earlier, we hope that the peer pressure will want others to do it also. And we hope that there will be institutional plans in at least some higher education institutions. Perhaps one more that I could just add that I left out along the way. There was a suggestion that one of the things that we as experts could promote is the idea of quality assurance, bringing in the social dimension as one of the indicators when we're doing a review of a school or of a university, of the thing, that this would become one of the things that gets measured. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Frank, for breaking a very complex topic down to manageable portions, if I may say so. So I think the group tomorrow will have a good start to work upon. International openness. You have been appointed by your group as the speaker, as the rapporteur. Will you please tell us what you found out?
Yes, so we had quite lively discussions, which were expertly led by our chair, Professor Hani Hilal. And the conclusions, which I'm going to try to summarize, are pertaining to either one or the other group. So I will not specify which one said which, but I'll try to just make a sort of overview. Firstly, in terms of what are the novelties when it comes to international openness in the Bucharest Communique, I think what most people felt was that the focus on implementation was something new in this area. I mean, there have been a lot of ministerial commitments and a lot of European level language on this issue, but the focus on implementation and the fact that all levels, European, national and institutional, have a sort of to-do list. If we look at the different documents, the mobility strategy, the policy forum statement, and the communique, this was something new and welcomed. Secondly, it was felt that the concept of mobility for better learning could be considered as something new and beneficial for internationalization as well and for international openness, because it helps some national contexts implement some Bologna tools, for example, recognition of prior learning, much better, because the purpose of mobility and of internationalization becomes manifest. Thirdly, it was thought as that the fact that the Bucharest Communique mentions that the European higher education area and the European research area should be brought together also has an impact on internationalization and international openness, and perhaps these two areas could devise a sort of internationalization strategy jointly. When it comes to the role of the experts, firstly, I think there is a great role in deciphering policy documents and making it easy to understand for people which need to implement and look at internationalization. And we've seen this struggle with having a common definition of international openness and European higher education area in a global context, and this is something that probably should be done at each national level. Secondly, the Bologna experts could help in making sense of the Bologna tools, which help internationalization, and here learning outcomes came out as well, but also qualification frameworks or recognition tools, other recognition tools. And finally, it was strongly thought that since not all countries have internationalization strategies, or since some countries are already revising them to include mobility elements, it's crucial that the Bologna experts contribute to designing designing national internationalization strategies or to evaluate them. Good practices. Well, I was very glad to see that there are a lot of good practices which could be raised. For example, a lot of countries are introducing financial incentives for institutions to further internationalize, either general incentives through quality assurance mechanisms or specific incentives for example, teaching in a foreign language or for establishing joint degrees, and this is something that could be further explored probably. Some countries are designing intercultural training courses for mobile students and staff before they leave, which apparently is very important for the mobility sojourn to be a success, and this is something which could be taken forward. The Flemish community of Belgium actually mentioned that they're trying to send 2 people, 2 academic staff members abroad at the same time, one which is more experienced and another one which is just starting to be internationalized, to be internationally active, and this is something which helps motivate academic staff to go abroad. And also in terms of good practice, the presence of decision makers, high-level decision makers in Bologna experts or higher education reform experts meetings seems to be very important to motivate their work ahead. In terms of the to-do list, it was thought that especially in terms of internationalization, there needs to be more national events disseminating information maybe as a follow-up to this same event. The experts could help in bringing about this common understanding of internationalization, what it means, and that it does not just mean attracting mobile students from other countries, it means much more than that. And also the experts could encourage the use of the European Area for Recognition Manual and also the toolkits that were designed by various projects, such as the IMPI project or other projects dealing with internationalization. Finally, when it came to what can we do between now and Yerevan, I think everyone thought that we could look at how countries implemented the 2007 EHEA in a global setting strategy, and also we can look at how internationalization strategies were designed at both national and institutional level. We can work on enhancing recognition and perhaps gaining a common understanding of what automatic means in this context. More peer learning with EHEA, but also non-EHEA experts, so expanding the pool of experts to countries which participate in the Bologna Policy Forum. And finally, improve the language training, because language was thought to be one of the major obstacles in further internationalization of higher education institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very concise presentation of another complex topic. Now, the last topic we are dealing with today is the ECTS-DS label counseling. Now, of course, this would not follow the questions for the other discussion groups, but Maria, I think it might be interesting for the audience to hear, are there any particular pieces of advice that you would want to give from what you have been discussing or what you have heard? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's true that our group was a little bit different, because it was even the second time that we meet the majority of the experts in the room, the majority of the Bologna expert, and some of the national agencies joined us as well for discussing about the main key issues on the labels, on the applications that we are going to, the selection that we are organizing this time for this 2012 selection round. We were 60 participants, so it's not bad as a group for discussing. I can say that we worked in real cases. The idea was to take some examples. It was an excuse to touch the main key issues. And let me say that it was really a unique opportunity to put together Bologna experts from many different countries, many different academic backgrounds, with different views on the main topics, and with the same responsibility this time for counseling the applicants that would like to apply for the labels this time. So thank you for this to all of them. And let me finish saying that we, in the session, we all were convinced that the labels have a really great potential for supporting mobility. And at the end of the day, supporting mobility is help students to obtain recognitions for their studies and their qualifications. So recommendations, our recommendation is, of course, to use all the information already available on the labels in our site web, in the Commission site web, to visit the webs on those that already received the labels in the past, and try to use this information for pushing other institutions around you to apply for the labels. I think it's a really great tool for mobility, really. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria, also for encouraging our experts. Except for Maria's group, the 4 other groups will continue tomorrow. I think there is a very good basis to go on. Maybe there are 2 issues that have, or one issue that has not surfaced apparently so much, and that is the lifelong learning concept, and the role also the transparency tools might play in the lifelong learning. It has to do with the social dimension, and it has to do with an upcoming issue, if not to say problem, how to bring together the world of higher education and the world of vocational education and training. Because if we think in terms of higher education institutions as partners in lifelong learning processes, that's an issue that might be coming up in the future, and it might be one of the issues that, if we find it necessary, we might also want to introduce into the Yerevan agenda. Are there any questions from the audience? Looking at your faces, I have the feeling that you are a bit outworked already today. So if there are no urgent questions, I would suggest that we all go back to the hotel and rest a little bit, and Raimonda is going to tell us where we're going to spend a most wonderful evening after a hard day's work.